Halloween stands as one of the most widely celebrated festivals in the modern Western world, yet its origins stretch back through centuries of tradition, blending ancient pagan practices with Christian observances and evolving folk customs into the commercial holiday recognized today. Understanding Halloween requires tracing the complex history of multiple traditions that merged, adapted, and transformed across centuries and continents. From ancient Celtic fire festivals to medieval Christian vigils, from folk beliefs about wandering spirits to Victorian parlor games, from Irish immigration to American commercialization, Halloween represents a tapestry of customs whose origins reveal profound insights into how humans have understood death, the supernatural, seasonal change, and community celebration across the ages. The deepest roots of Halloween traditions extend to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, celebrated on the night of October 31st and the day of November 1st. The Celts, who inhabited Ireland, Britain, and northern France before Roman conquest, organized their year around pastoral and agricultural cycles. Samhain marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, the darker half of the year. This liminal moment between light and dark, summer and winter, abundance and scarcity, carried profound significance in Celtic cosmology. The boundary between the natural and supernatural worlds was believed to grow thin at Samhain, allowing spirits of the dead to return to the earthly realm and permitting greater interaction between humans and otherworldly beings. The evidence for Samhain celebrations comes from various sources, though direct contemporary accounts from the pre-Christian Celtic period are sparse. Later medieval Irish literature preserves stories and references to Samhain that likely reflect older traditions, though filtered through Christian perspectives. Archaeological evidence including ritual deposits and the remains of feasting suggests communal celebrations occurred at this season. The practices associated with Samhain included lighting bonfires on hilltops, which served both practical and ritual purposes. These fires provided light during the lengthening nights and symbolically represented the sun's power being preserved through winter darkness. Communities would extinguish their hearth fires and relight them from the communal bonfire, creating ritual unity. The supernatural beliefs associated with Samhain were complex and varied. The spirits of deceased family members were thought to return home on this night, and places were set for them at feasts. However, not all returning spirits were benevolent. Malevolent entities might also cross into the human world, threatening the living. Various protective practices developed to guard against harmful supernatural forces. People wore disguises or costumes, possibly to confuse or deceive dangerous spirits by disguising their human identity. Offerings of food and drink were left outside for wandering spirits, both to honor friendly ghosts and to placate potentially threatening ones. Divination practices were performed, as the thin boundary between worlds made Samhain particularly propitious for glimpsing the future, especially regarding marriage and death. The Roman conquest of Celtic lands brought new influences to autumn festivals. The Romans celebrated Feralia in late October, a festival honoring the dead, and Pomona, a festival celebrating the goddess of fruit and orchards whose symbol was the apple. These Roman festivals may have merged with or influenced Celtic Samhain practices in areas under Roman control. The association of apples with Halloween traditions, including apple bobbing and various apple-based divination games, potentially reflects this Roman influence, though direct lines of transmission are difficult to establish with certainty. The blending of Celtic and Roman traditions created a complex synthesis that formed the substrate for later Christian adaptations. The Christianization of Celtic lands, occurring gradually from the 5th century onward, brought deliberate efforts by church authorities to transform pagan festivals into Christian observances. This strategy of adaptation rather than elimination allowed converts to maintain familiar seasonal celebrations while redirecting their religious significance. The Church established All Saints' Day, also called All Hallows' Day, on November 1st to honor all Christian saints and martyrs. The exact date of this establishment is debated among historians, with some sources suggesting it occurred as early as the 7th century while others indicate the 9th century. Regardless of precise dating, the placement of All Saints' Day on November 1st was almost certainly deliberate, intended to Christianize the Samhain festival by overlaying Christian meaning onto the existing celebration. All Saints' Day was preceded by All Hallows' Eve on October 31st, the evening before the Holy Day. In medieval Christianity, vigils before major feast days were times of prayer and preparation. All Hallows' Eve thus became a Christian observance, though it retained connections to older beliefs about the dead and the supernatural. The Church's theology of purgatory, developing during the medieval period, provided a Christian framework for intercession on behalf of the dead. Prayers for souls in purgatory became central to All Hallows' Eve observances. The faithful believed that prayers and masses could shorten the time souls spent in purgatory, providing motivation for special devotions on this night. The establishment of All Souls' Day on November 2nd, formally recognized by the Church in the 11th century, created a 3-day period focused on death and remembrance: All Hallows' Eve, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day. This triduum of observances provided a Christian framework encompassing reverence for saints, prayer for the dead, and reflection on mortality. However, the older, pre-Christian associations with this season persisted in folk practice alongside official church observances. Medieval people maintained beliefs and customs that mingled Christian and pre-Christian elements, creating a complex layering of meanings around the Halloween season. Medieval Halloween customs varied significantly across different regions of Europe, reflecting local traditions and the varying influence of pre-Christian practices. In Ireland and Scotland, where Celtic traditions remained strongest, Halloween retained many elements likely descended from Samhain. Bonfires continued to be lit, though now explained as Christian celebrations or protective measures rather than pagan rituals. People went from house to house in disguise, performing songs or verses in exchange for food, a practice called mumming or guising that prefigured modern trick-or-treating. Divination games, especially those predicting marriage prospects, remained popular despite church disapproval of such practices as superstitious. The carving of turnips, and later pumpkins, into lanterns represents one of the most iconic Halloween traditions with origins in British Isles folk culture. The practice of carving faces into turnips or other root vegetables and placing candles inside created eerie glowing faces that served both decorative and protective purposes. These lanterns were associated with various legends, most famously the tale of Stingy Jack. According to Irish folklore, Jack was a trickster who managed to trap the devil and made him promise never to claim Jack's soul. When Jack died, he was refused entry to both heaven and hell. The devil gave Jack a burning coal to light his way as he wandered the earth eternally. Jack placed the coal in a carved turnip, creating the first jack-o'-lantern. This legend, while recorded relatively late, likely reflects older beliefs about wandering spirits and the protective power of light against supernatural threats. The emigration of Irish and Scottish people to North America in the 19th century, particularly following the Irish potato famine of the 1840s, transplanted Halloween customs to the New World. These immigrants brought their traditional Halloween practices, including guising, divination games, and the carving of lanterns. In America, they discovered pumpkins, native to North America and larger and easier to carve than turnips. The jack-o'-lantern tradition readily adapted to this new vegetable, and carved pumpkins became quintessentially associated with American Halloween celebrations. The transformation from turnip to pumpkin exemplifies how immigrant traditions adapted to new environments while maintaining essential elements. The American development of trick-or-treating as a widespread, organized custom represents a relatively modern evolution of older practices. While medieval guising involved going door-to-door in costume, 19th century Halloween in America initially developed in different directions. Halloween parties and community celebrations became popular, featuring games, fortune-telling, and seasonal foods. Trick-or-treating in its modern form emerged gradually in the early 20th century, though its exact origins are debated. Some communities practiced forms of door-to-door collecting by the 1920s and 1930s, but the custom was disrupted by World War II sugar rationing. After the war, trick-or-treating exploded in popularity, becoming a central Halloween activity by the 1950s. The evolution of Halloween costumes reflects changing cultural attitudes and commercial influences. Medieval guising often involved simple disguises, wearing clothes inside out, blackening faces with soot, or donning makeshift masks. The purpose was primarily to avoid recognition by spirits or to adopt a liminal identity between human and supernatural. Victorian-era Halloween costumes continued in this tradition, featuring ghosts, witches, skeletons, and other frightening figures associated with death and the supernatural. The commercialization of Halloween in the 20th century expanded costume options dramatically. Store-bought costumes became available, and the range of characters represented expanded beyond traditional Halloween figures to include popular culture characters, creating the eclectic mix of costume types seen in contemporary Halloween celebrations. The association of witches with Halloween deserves particular examination, as it represents a complex intersection of folk belief, historical persecution, and modern reinterpretation. Medieval European belief in witchcraft was widespread, though the intensity of which persecution varied by time and place. Witches were believed to have made pacts with the devil, granting them supernatural powers to harm their neighbors through malevolent magic. The Halloween season, with its associations with the supernatural and the spirit world, naturally became linked with witches. Folk belief held that witches were particularly active at this time, holding Sabbaths where they worshipped Satan and plotted evil deeds. The iconic image of the witch riding a broomstick emerged during the late medieval and early modern period, becoming firmly associated with Halloween imagery. The historical reality of witch persecution casts a dark shadow over the whimsical modern treatment of witches as Halloween symbols. The European witch hunts, reaching their peak in the 16th and 17th centuries, resulted in tens of thousands of executions, the victims predominantly women. These persecutions reflected complex social tensions, religious conflicts, and gender dynamics rather than actual supernatural threat. The transformation of the witch from a figure of genuine fear and brutal persecution to a costumed character for children represents a significant cultural shift, sanitizing and trivializing a tragic chapter of European history. Modern neo-pagan movements have reclaimed the witch as a positive symbol, viewing historical cunning folk and herbalists as practitioners of pre-Christian traditions rather than diabolical threats. Black cats, bats, spiders, and other creatures associated with Halloween imagery each have their own paths of association with this festival. Black cats became linked with witchcraft through medieval and early modern beliefs that witches could transform into cats or used cats as familiars, demonic spirits in animal form that assisted witches in their evil work. Cats, particularly black ones, were persecuted alongside suspected witches, sometimes being burned alive or tortured. The association of cats with bad luck, especially black cats crossing one's path, reflects these sinister medieval associations. The modern Halloween image of the black cat, while playful, echoes centuries of superstitious fear and cruelty toward cats. Bats became associated with Halloween through multiple connections. As nocturnal creatures, bats were mysterious and somewhat frightening to people unfamiliar with their biology. The timing of autumn bat migration and increased bat activity at dusk during autumn brought these creatures to greater notice at the Halloween season. Central and South American vampire bat species, which do feed on blood, provided a factual basis for horrific legends that were then projected onto all bat species. The literary figure of the vampire, crystallized in Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897, firmly connected bats with vampires through Dracula's ability to transform into a bat. This literary association strengthened bats' place in Halloween iconography, linking them to themes of death, blood, and supernatural transformation. Spiders and their webs gained Halloween associations through connections with abandonment, decay, and the boundary between life and death. Cobwebs suggest neglected, haunted spaces where the living no longer tread, perfect settings for ghost stories and supernatural encounters. Folk beliefs attributed magical or ominous significance to spiders. Some traditions held that seeing a spider on Halloween brought good luck, as it might be a deceased loved one watching over you. Other beliefs warned that spiders were witches' familiars or harbingers of death. The ambivalence toward spiders, simultaneously fascinating and frightening, made them apt symbols for Halloween's themes of attraction and repulsion toward the macabre. Skeletons and skulls, ubiquitous in Halloween decorations, represent the most direct symbols of mortality and death. Medieval culture had a complex relationship with death imagery. The later Middle Ages saw the rise of memento mori, artistic and literary reminders of death's inevitability, epitomized in the danse macabre or dance of death imagery showing skeletons dancing with people of all social classes. This reflected medieval preoccupation with death following the Black Death plague and recurring epidemics that made mortality a constant presence. Halloween's embrace of death imagery connects to these medieval traditions, though transformed from sobering memento mori into playful decoration. The sanitization and aestheticization of death symbols in Halloween represents a cultural mechanism for approaching frightening realities of mortality through controlled, festive contexts. Ghosts are perhaps the most fundamental Halloween symbol, directly connecting to the festival's origins in beliefs about the returning dead. Every culture possesses ghost stories and beliefs about spirits of the dead, but Halloween crystallizes these beliefs into a specific season and celebration. Medieval ghost beliefs were complex, influenced by Christian theology, classical traditions, and folk beliefs. Official church teaching held that souls went to heaven, hell, or purgatory after death, and apparitions were either angels, demons, or souls temporarily released from purgatory for specific purposes. However, folk belief maintained a richer ghost lore including various types of spirits with different motivations and characteristics. Some ghosts haunted specific locations, others sought to resolve unfinished business, and still others returned to warn or aid the living. The Victorian era saw an explosion of interest in ghosts and spiritualism that profoundly influenced Halloween celebrations. Victorian society, despite or perhaps because of increasing secularization and scientific advancement, became fascinated with contacting the dead through seances and mediums. Halloween, with its traditional associations with the dead, became a popular time for spiritualist activities and ghost-themed entertainment. Victorian Halloween parties featured dark rooms, eerie storytelling, and games designed to produce thrills and shivers. This Victorian ghost culture established many templates for modern Halloween entertainment, including haunted houses, ghost stories, and the general atmosphere of spooky but safe thrills that characterize contemporary Halloween. Fortune-telling and divination games represent another significant category of Halloween customs with ancient roots. The liminal nature of Halloween, positioned at the boundary between seasons and the transition from harvest abundance to winter scarcity, made it particularly suitable for glimpsing the future. Young women especially participated in divination practices, most commonly aimed at discovering the identity of future husbands. Dozens of different divination games existed, varying by region and evolving over time. Some involved interpreting patterns formed by pouring molten lead into water, others examined the shapes of egg whites dropped in water, and many utilized apples or nuts in various ingenious ways. Apple divination games were particularly popular and diverse. Apple bobbing, still played today, had divinatory significance in some traditions. The first person to successfully bite an apple would be the first to marry. Another apple game involved peeling an apple in one long strip and throwing the peel over one's shoulder. The shape the peel formed as it landed supposedly revealed the initial of one's future spouse. Hanging apples on strings and attempting to bite them without using hands provided both entertainment and marriage prediction. These games, while seemingly innocent party entertainment, preserved very old beliefs about the supernatural power of this season to reveal hidden knowledge about the future. Nut divination, particularly using hazelnuts or chestnuts, was another common practice. Young women would name nuts for potential suitors and place them in the fire. If a nut burned steadily, that suitor would be faithful. If it popped and jumped about, that suitor would be unreliable. Nuts placed side by side in embers represented couples. If the nuts stayed together as they burned, the relationship would succeed, but if they rolled apart, the romance would fail. These nut divinations connected to pre-Christian Celtic associations of hazelnuts with wisdom and hidden knowledge, adapted into folk practices that persisted for centuries. Mirror divination represented a more daring form of Halloween fortune-telling. A young woman would sit before a mirror at midnight on Halloween, sometimes by candlelight in a darkened room, eating an apple and combing her hair. If she performed the ritual correctly, she would see the face of her future husband in the mirror. However, this practice carried risk. If the woman was fated never to marry, she would see a skull or death's head instead. This divination game, while probably practiced less frequently than the simpler apple and nut games, exemplified the more serious and potentially frightening aspects of Halloween divination. The mirror, a liminal object showing reality transformed, served as a perfect tool for supernatural revelation. The role of food in Halloween traditions reflects both practical seasonal realities and symbolic meanings. Late October and early November marked the final harvest in northern climates and the beginning of preparation for winter. Apples, nuts, and late vegetables were naturally associated with this season and featured prominently in celebrations. The slaughter of livestock before winter, when feed would become scarce, provided fresh meat for feasting. The abundance of autumn harvest contrasted with the scarcity of approaching winter, creating a final celebration before the lean months. This agricultural reality underlay many Halloween food traditions, as communities feasted on seasonal abundance while it was available. Soul cakes, small round cakes associated with All Souls' Day, represent an important medieval Halloween food tradition. On All Souls' Day, poor people would go from door to door offering prayers for the dead in exchange for soul cakes. This practice, called souling, prefigured modern trick-or-treating in significant ways. The cakes, often spiced and marked with a cross, were understood as representing the souls in purgatory. Eating the cake symbolically freed souls from purgatory through the prayers and charity involved in the exchange. Wealthy households prepared large quantities of soul cakes for distribution, fulfilling religious obligations while also providing seasonal charity to the poor. The souling tradition continued in some regions through the 19th century before fading away, though its spirit persists in trick-or-treating's exchange of treats for performances. Colcannon and barnbrack represent traditional Irish Halloween foods that carried divinatory functions. Colcannon, a dish of mashed potatoes with cabbage or kale, was traditionally served at Halloween with various objects hidden within: a coin predicting wealth, a ring predicting marriage, a thimble predicting spinsterhood, and a button predicting bachelorhood. Diners would search through their portions to discover their fortune. Barnbrack, a fruitcake, similarly contained hidden objects that predicted the future. These food divinations transformed ordinary meals into fortune-telling activities, adding supernatural excitement to communal eating. The tradition of hiding objects in Halloween foods persisted even as the practice migrated to America, adapting to new foods and contexts while maintaining the essential element of edible fortune-telling. Candy's association with Halloween is a relatively modern development driven by commercial interests. Early American Halloween celebrations featured homemade treats, including cookies, cakes, and candied apples. The commercialization of Halloween accelerated in the mid-20th century as candy companies recognized the marketing opportunity. The practice of distributing store-bought candy during trick-or-treating became standard by the 1960s and 1970s, overtaking homemade treats partly due to convenience and partly due to safety concerns about tampered food. Candy companies developed Halloween-specific marketing strategies, creating miniature sizes ideal for distribution and seasonal varieties featuring Halloween imagery. The modern association of Halloween with candy consumption represents a significant shift from older traditions that emphasized baking and seasonal harvest foods. The development of haunted houses and haunted attractions represents a 20th-century elaboration of Halloween's spooky themes into commercial entertainment. The concept of the haunted house grew from older traditions of ghost stories and spooky Halloween entertainment, but became commercialized and systematized. Early haunted houses were often created by community organizations, service clubs, or schools as Halloween fundraisers. These progressed from simply decorated rooms with volunteers in costumes to increasingly elaborate productions featuring sophisticated props, special effects, and carefully designed scare tactics. Professional haunted attractions emerged as businesses, creating year-round employment preparing seasonal attractions and drawing thousands of visitors willing to pay for controlled fear experiences. The psychology of haunted attractions connects to humans' complex relationship with fear. Controlled fear in safe environments can be pleasurable, triggering adrenaline and endorphins while the rational mind knows no real danger exists. Halloween provides cultural permission to seek out and enjoy fear experiences, transforming anxiety about death and the supernatural into entertainment. Haunted houses exploit this psychology, creating environments designed to trigger fear responses through darkness, sudden sounds, grotesque imagery, and startle scares while maintaining actual safety. The popularity of increasingly extreme haunted attractions, including those requiring participants to sign liability waivers and agree to simulated violence, demonstrates the appeal of intense fear experiences within controlled contexts. The commercialization of Halloween more broadly represents a dramatic 20th-century transformation of the holiday. What began as a folk festival and minor religious observance became a major commercial event generating billions of dollars in spending on costumes, candy, decorations, and other Halloween merchandise. The greeting card industry, costume manufacturers, decoration producers, candy companies, and retailers all developed Halloween marketing strategies. Spirit Halloween stores, existing only seasonally, exemplified Halloween's commercial significance, with temporary stores opening in vacant retail spaces each autumn. The economic importance of Halloween to retailers, second only to Christmas among holidays, drove continued expansion of Halloween seasons, with merchandise appearing earlier each year. The globalization of Halloween in recent decades represents another significant development in the holiday's evolution. Originally concentrated in countries with Celtic heritage and English-speaking nations influenced by Irish and Scottish immigration, Halloween spread globally in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. This expansion often generated cultural tension, with critics viewing Halloween as American cultural imperialism overwhelming local traditions. In countries with existing autumn festivals or celebrations of the dead, Halloween sometimes merged with or competed against indigenous traditions. Japan's enthusiastic but distinctively Japanese adoption of Halloween, focused heavily on elaborate costumes and street parties in commercial districts, exemplifies how Halloween adapted to new cultural contexts while maintaining core elements of costume and festivity. The religious controversy surrounding Halloween has intensified in recent decades, particularly among conservative Christians who view the holiday as pagan or satanic. These critics point to Halloween's pre-Christian origins, its associations with witchcraft and the occult, and the prominence of death imagery as evidence that Christians should not participate. Alternative celebrations like harvest festivals or Reformation Day parties have been promoted in some religious communities, offering autumn festivity without what critics see as Halloween's problematic elements. This religious opposition to Halloween represents ongoing tensions between secular and religious culture, and reflects centuries-old Christian ambivalence toward folk practices with pagan origins. Conversely, some Christians defend Halloween participation, arguing that the holiday's Christian elements, particularly its connection to All Saints and All Souls Days, justify Christian engagement. These defenders note that nearly all Christian holidays incorporate pre-Christian elements, and that participation in secular Halloween activities no more endorses paganism than Christmas tree decoration endorses Germanic paganism. The debate reflects broader questions about how religious communities engage with broader secular culture and where boundaries should be drawn between acceptable adaptation and unacceptable compromise. The tradition of Halloween mischief and vandalism represents a darker aspect of Halloween celebrations that communities have struggled to control. The night before Halloween, known variously as Mischief Night, Devil's Night, or Gate Night depending on region, traditionally permitted minor pranks and disorder. Soaping windows, throwing eggs, toilet papering trees, and moving outdoor furniture were common pranks. However, this licensed mischief sometimes escalated into genuine vandalism and danger, including arson in some cities. Community efforts to channel youthful energy into organized activities and the emphasis on trick-or-treating as a supervised alternative helped reduce Halloween vandalism in many areas, though it remains a concern in some communities. The trick component of trick-or-treat originally carried genuine threat of mischief if treats were not provided, though in modern practice it has become merely a formulaic phrase. Historical Halloween celebrations sometimes involve genuine aggressive begging, with groups of young people demanding food or money and threatening property damage if refused. The modern transformation of trick-or-treating into a cute activity for young children accompanied by adults represents a sanitization of what could be a rougher, more threatening interaction. This evolution reflects broader social changes toward greater supervision of children and reduced tolerance for disorder and minor criminality. The parental fears about Halloween dangers, particularly contaminated candy, represent a significant late 20th century development that reshaped trick-or-treating practices. Reports of razor blades in apples or poisoned candy created widespread panic in the 1970s and 1980s, despite very few confirmed cases and those mostly involving family members rather than strangers. The media amplification of these fears led to dramatic changes in Halloween practices. The decline of homemade treats, the rise of organized trunk-or-treat events in controlled spaces like school parking lots, increased parental supervision of trick-or-treating, and hospitals offering to X-ray Halloween candy. These responses to largely exaggerated dangers transformed Halloween from a relatively independent children's activity into a heavily supervised and controlled event, reflecting broader anxieties about child safety and stranger danger. The relationship between Halloween and horror movies represents a significant 20th and 21st century cultural development. Horror films found natural affinity with Halloween's spooky themes, and Halloween became the premier season for horror movie releases. The Halloween film franchise, beginning with John Carpenter's 1978 slasher film, directly connected horror cinema to the holiday through its title and setting. Television programming featured horror movie marathons and Halloween specials. This media saturation of horror imagery during October reinforced Halloween's association with fear and the macabre while also commercializing and standardizing Halloween imagery. The horror genre's evolution from Gothic literature through monster movies to slasher films to supernatural horror paralleled and influenced evolving Halloween celebrations. The demographic of Halloween celebration has shifted significantly over time. Originally a celebration for all ages, by the early 20th century Halloween became increasingly associated with children and adolescents. The mid to late 20th century saw continued emphasis on Halloween as a children's holiday, with trick-or-treating dominated by young children. However, recent decades have seen adult participation in Halloween increase dramatically, with elaborate adult costumes, adult-oriented parties, and haunted attractions targeting adult audiences. This renewed adult engagement with Halloween reflects various factors: nostalgia for childhood celebrations, the appeal of costume play and temporary identity transformation, and Halloween's usefulness as a commercialized celebration in the void between summer vacations and winter holidays. The pet costumes and themed pet merchandise represent an extreme extension of Halloween commercialization, with Halloween-themed products available for dogs, cats, and other pets. This development exemplifies how commercial interests continually expand Halloween markets into new areas. The phenomenon of dressing pets in costumes for social media sharing reflects contemporary culture's emphasis on shareable content and the blurring of boundaries between private celebration and public performance. Pet Halloween costumes, seemingly frivolous, actually represent broader patterns of consumption, identity expression, and social media culture characteristic of contemporary holiday celebration. The environmental concerns about Halloween have emerged as awareness of waste and sustainability has grown. Single-use costumes, particularly cheap imported costumes worn once and discarded, generate significant waste. Plastic decorations, candy wrappers, and other Halloween disposables contribute to environmental problems. Conscious consumers have begun seeking more sustainable Halloween alternatives, second-hand or homemade costumes, reusable decorations, bulk candy to reduce packaging, and composting pumpkins after Halloween. These environmental considerations represent a new dimension of Halloween practice, absent from historical celebrations but increasingly important to contemporary participants concerned about sustainability. The COVID-19 pandemic's impact on Halloween celebrations in 2020 and 2021 demonstrated the holiday's adaptability and importance to communities. Traditional trick-or-treating was curtailed or modified in many areas, with alternatives including socially distanced candy distribution methods, drive-through events, and virtual celebrations. Despite pandemic challenges, communities worked creatively to preserve Halloween experiences, demonstrating the holiday's cultural importance and emotional significance. The pandemic's impact on Halloween highlighted how much the holiday depends on social interaction and community participation, while also revealing humans' capacity to adapt cherished traditions to unprecedented circumstances. The future evolution of Halloween customs will likely continue patterns of commercialization, technological integration, and cultural globalization, while also seeing potential pushback toward more sustainable and community-focused celebrations. Technological developments may enable new forms of Halloween entertainment, from virtual reality haunted experiences to augmented reality trick-or-treating. Climate change may affect Halloween weather and autumnal seasonal changes that currently provide atmospheric backdrop for celebrations. Demographic changes and increasing cultural diversity may introduce new influences into Halloween traditions or prompt re-examination of problematic aspects of current celebrations, particularly concerning cultural appropriation in costume choices. In conclusion, Halloween represents a remarkably rich tapestry of traditions spanning millennia and continents, from ancient Celtic fire festivals through medieval Christian observances to modern commercial celebration. Each custom and symbol associated with Halloween has its own history, reflecting changing beliefs, social conditions, commercial influences, and cultural exchanges. The carved pumpkin connects to Irish folklore and American agriculture. The witch costume reflects centuries of gender-based persecution and modern neo-pagan reclamation. Trick-or-treating evolved from medieval charity customs through Irish guising to American suburban ritual. Understanding these origins and evolutions reveals Halloween not as a static tradition but as a living cultural phenomenon continuously adapting while maintaining threads of continuity stretching back through centuries. The staying power of Halloween, its ability to remain relevant and beloved across dramatic historical and social changes, demonstrates the deep human needs it serves. The desire to acknowledge and perhaps tame our fear of death, to celebrate community and seasonal transition, to to play with identity through costume and disguise, and to preserve traditions connecting us to our ancestors even as we transform those traditions for new contexts. The relationship between Halloween and the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos, celebrated in Mexico and other Latin American countries, reveals interesting parallels and distinctions between different cultural approaches to honoring the dead at this season. While both celebrations occur at the same time of year and share themes of death and remembering deceased loved ones, they developed largely independently and reflect very different cultural attitudes. Day of the Dead, with roots in pre-Columbian Mesoamerican traditions combined with Catholic influences, emphasizes joyful remembrance and maintaining connections with deceased family members. Families create elaborate altars or ofrendas decorated with marigolds, photographs of the deceased, and favorite foods and drinks of those being remembered. The celebration is fundamentally about maintaining family bonds across the boundary of death, treating deceased relatives as continuing members of the family who return for annual visits. The contrast between Halloween's often scary and macabre aesthetic and Day of the Dead's colorful, celebratory approach to death imagery reflects fundamentally different cultural attitudes toward mortality. Halloween developed in cultures that increasingly sequestered death from everyday life, making it a frightening, liminal experience. Day of the Dead comes from cultures that maintained more integrated relationships with death and the dead, viewing mortality as a natural part of life's cycle rather than a fearful ending. The skull imagery prominent in both celebrations illustrates this difference. Halloween skulls tend toward the grotesque and frightening, while Day of the Dead's decorated sugar skulls are beautiful, colorful, and even whimsical. This cultural difference in death attitudes shaped how each tradition developed and what emotional tones they carry. The recent cultural exchange and blending between Halloween and Day of the Dead in areas where both traditions coexist, particularly in the southwestern United States and increasingly in popular culture, demonstrates how festivals continue to evolve through cultural contact. Some celebrations incorporate elements of both traditions, featuring both jack-o'-lanterns and ofrendas, both trick-or-treating and cemetery visits to honor the dead. This blending sometimes generates concern about cultural appropriation, with critics arguing that commercialized, superficial adoption of Day of the Dead imagery by non-Latino populations for Halloween parties disrespects the tradition's cultural and spiritual significance. These debates about cultural exchange versus appropriation reflect broader contemporary tensions about cultural boundaries, respect, and the ethics of adopting elements from other cultures. The role of cemetery visits in Halloween and related traditions vary significantly across cultures and time periods. In some European countries, visiting cemeteries on All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day to clean graves, leave flowers, and pray for the deceased remains an important tradition. In the Philippines, families spend entire nights in cemeteries during this period, camping out at family graves and festive gatherings that combine reverence for the dead with family reunions. These cemetery customs emphasize continuity and connection with ancestors, maintaining physical places of memory and regularly refreshing bonds with the deceased. The American practice largely abandons cemetery visits during Halloween, though some families visit graves around this time. The shift away from cemetery-focused observance toward trick-or-treating and parties represents a broader cultural move away from death as a central focus of the celebration. The legend of Sleepy Hollow and the Headless Horseman, popularized by Washington Irving's 1820 story, represents an important American contribution to Halloween folklore. Irving's tale, set in a Hudson Valley village and featuring a terrifying headless ghost pursuing the hapless Ichabod Crane, captured essential Halloween themes of fear, the supernatural, and the boundary between skepticism and belief. The story has been adapted countless times for stage, film, and television, becoming firmly embedded in American Halloween culture. The Headless Horseman joined the witch, ghost, and skeleton as iconic Halloween figures. Irving's story also exemplified the American tradition of Halloween storytelling, using regional folklore and settings to create new legends that felt ancient even when newly created. The development of Halloween literature and poetry created artistic expressions of the holiday's themes and atmosphere. Beyond Irving, writers like Edgar Allan Poe, whose dark, Gothic tales perfectly suited Halloween's mood, became associated with the holiday despite not writing specifically about it. Ray Bradbury's works, particularly The Halloween Tree and Something Wicked This Way Comes, explicitly engaged with Halloween themes and became Halloween classics. Poetry, from serious verses contemplating mortality to humorous doggerel about trick-or-treating, proliferated in Halloween anthologies and children's books. This literary tradition enriched Halloween culture, providing texts for reading aloud at parties, for classroom activities, and for personal reflection on the holiday's meanings. Children's Halloween books represent a significant publishing category, introducing young readers to Halloween through stories ranging from innocently spooky to gently scary. These books serve multiple functions: entertaining children, managing fears about scary things by presenting them in controlled, story contexts, and transmitting Halloween traditions and values. The balance in children's Halloween literature between scary and comforting, between acknowledging real fears and reassuring children of safety, reflects broader cultural negotiations about how to introduce children to difficult topics like fear and death. The evolution of children's Halloween books from simple picture books to sophisticated young adult horror novels parallels broader changes in how children's literature approaches complex themes. The influence of German and Irish immigrants on American Halloween celebrations extended beyond the customs already discussed to include various specific practices and beliefs. German immigrants brought traditions of Walpurgis Night, celebrated on April 30th, which influenced some Halloween practices. Pennsylvania Dutch communities contributed folk art traditions, including paper cutting and hex signs, that influenced Halloween decoration styles. Irish immigrants' powerful storytelling traditions enriched American Halloween with ghost stories and legends. The blending of these immigrant contributions with existing American culture created a distinctively American Halloween that honored multiple European origins while developing unique characteristics shaped by the American context. The role of schools in Halloween celebrations became increasingly important in the 20th century, with classroom Halloween parties, costume parades, and Halloween-themed education becoming standard features of American school experience. Teachers used Halloween as an opportunity for creative activities, making decorations, writing ghost stories, studying bats and spiders, and reading seasonal literature. School Halloween celebrations provided supervised, communal experiences of the holiday and helped standardize Halloween practices across diverse communities. However, concerns about religious objections, cultural sensitivity, and classroom time led some schools to eliminate or drastically modify Halloween celebrations in recent decades, replacing them with generic, fall festivals, or eliminating special celebrations entirely. This change reflects broader debates about religious expression in public schools and cultural inclusivity in increasingly diverse communities. The superstitions associated with Halloween extended beyond divination practices to include various beliefs about what should and should not be done on this night. Some traditions warned against looking over your shoulder while trick-or-treating, as you might see spirits following you. Others cautioned against stepping on cracks or walking through graveyards at midnight. These superstitions, whether genuinely believed or playfully observed, added to Halloween's atmosphere of supernatural danger and excitement. The persistence of superstitious behaviors and beliefs, even among people who consciously reject superstition, demonstrates how cultural traditions maintain power through repetition and social transmission regardless of individuals' rational beliefs. The economic multiplier effects of Halloween extend far beyond direct spending on costumes and candy. Restaurants and bars offer Halloween-themed menus and special events. Travel destinations promote Halloween attractions to draw tourists. Media companies produce Halloween content. Agricultural businesses benefit from pumpkin sales and visits to pumpkin patches and corn mazes. The craft industry supplies materials for homemade costumes and decorations. This economic ecosystem around Halloween creates employment and economic activity across multiple sectors, making Halloween economically significant beyond the obvious retail spending. The economic importance of Halloween gives businesses strong incentive to promote and extend the holiday, driving commercial elaboration of Halloween that both enhances and, critics argue, distorts the celebration. The role of humor in Halloween traditions provides counterbalance to the holiday's scary elements. Humorous costumes, parody decorations, and comedy horror entertainment offer alternative ways to engage with Halloween beyond pure scariness. The humor can be gentle, as in cute children's costumes, or edgy and transgressive, as in adult costumes that mock sacred cows or push boundaries of good taste. This humor serves important functions. It diffuses anxiety about scary themes, provides social bonding through shared laughter, and allows playful subversion of normal social rules under cover of Halloween license. The balance between scary and funny in Halloween celebrations varies by context and preference, but both elements contribute to the holiday's appeal. The tradition of telling ghost stories at Halloween connects to ancient practices of oral storytelling around winter fires and serves important cultural functions. Ghost stories transmit folklore and cultural memory, entertain listeners, build communal bonds through shared experiences of fear and relief, and allow exploration of death and the supernatural in narrative form. The art of ghost storytelling, with its pacing, atmosphere building, and well-timed scares, represents a distinctive narrative skill. Professional ghost storytellers sometimes perform at Halloween events, reviving ancient bardic traditions for contemporary audiences. Personal ghost stories, accounts of supposedly real supernatural experiences, circulate within families and communities, blurring the line between fiction and claimed reality in ways that enhance Halloween's mysterious atmosphere. The development of Halloween-themed video games represents a recent extension of Halloween entertainment into digital realms. Games ranging from horror survival games to casual puzzle games with Halloween themes provide interactive Halloween experiences. Some games are explicitly seasonal, played primarily during October. Others incorporate Halloween events or themed content during this season. The gaming industry's engagement with Halloween demonstrates the holiday's adaptability to new entertainment media. Virtual Halloween celebrations during pandemic lockdowns highlighted digital spaces' potential for maintaining Halloween traditions when physical gatherings were impossible, suggesting future Halloween celebrations may increasingly incorporate digital elements even when pandemic restrictions are absent. The phenomenon of Halloween-themed television episodes represents another significant manifestation of Halloween in popular culture. Long-running television series often produce special Halloween episodes featuring holiday-appropriate plots, costumes, and references. These episodes became anticipated annual events for viewers, with some shows' Halloween episodes becoming particularly beloved and rewatchable. The tradition of Halloween specials extends from children's programming to adult sitcoms to prestige dramas, demonstrating Halloween's versatility as a setting for different types of storytelling. The concentration of horror-themed television programming during October creates a media atmosphere saturated with Halloween content that reinforces the holiday's cultural presence. The role of urban legends in Halloween lore, particularly stories about dangers of trick-or-treating, reflects broader cultural anxieties about childhood safety and stranger danger. The stories about poisoned candy or razor blades in apples, despite being largely unfounded, spread widely and influenced behavior. These legends reveal more about the fears of the society that circulates them than about actual threats. The sociological study of urban legends helps understand how communities process anxieties through narrative, creating cautionary tales that express fears and prescribe preventive behaviors. Halloween, with its emphasis on children going door-to-door to strangers' homes, naturally attracted anxiety-driven legends warning of potential dangers lurking in this transgression of normal boundaries. The architectural influence of Halloween can be seen in homes and buildings designed to embody Halloween aesthetics year-round. Gothic Victorian houses, with their towers, asymmetrical designs, and dark color schemes, exemplify architecture that resonates with Halloween sensibilities. Some homeowners embrace Halloween decor as year-round aesthetic, maintaining spooky decoration permanently rather than seasonally. The influence flows the other direction as well, with Halloween decoration trends influencing broader interior design and architecture through mainstreaming of dark, dramatic aesthetics. The Halloween house phenomenon, where particular houses in neighborhoods are known for elaborate Halloween displays, creates local landmarks and traditions that strengthen community identity. The competitive aspect of Halloween decorating has intensified in recent decades, with neighbors competing to create the most impressive displays. Some Halloween enthusiasts invest thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in elaborate decorations featuring animatronics, sophisticated lighting, sound effects, and complex scenes. This competitive decorating shares characteristics with competitive Christmas decorating but often embraces darker, more transgressive themes. The Neighborhood Halloween Display Tour, where families drive or walk through areas known for excellent decorations, has become a Halloween tradition in many communities. This public display serves multiple functions: entertainment for viewers, creative expression for decorators, and community building through shared participation in seasonal festivity. The preservation of historic Halloween traditions through folklore societies, museums, and historical reenactors ensures that older customs are not entirely lost to commercialization and modernization. Living history museums sometimes offer Halloween programs demonstrating traditional harvest festivals, historical ghost stories, or Victorian-era Halloween parties. Folklore scholars document regional Halloween variations and disappearing traditions. These preservation efforts maintain links to Halloween's past while acknowledging that traditions naturally evolve. The tension between preservation and evolution characterizes all living traditions. Halloween must change to remain relevant while retaining enough continuity to maintain identity across generations. The international variations in Halloween-adjacent celebrations reveal how different cultures approach the universal human need to mark seasonal transitions and acknowledge death. In China, the Hungry Ghost Festival occurs in late summer rather than autumn but shares Halloween's concern with wandering spirits and appropriate offerings. Celtic fire festivals occurred at multiple points in the year, not just at Samhain. These parallel traditions suggest that Halloween taps into deep human patterns of seasonal observation and supernatural belief rather than representing a unique Celtic invention. The comparative study of these festivals illuminates both universal human patterns and the specific historical developments that made Halloween the particular tradition it became. The role of local government in regulating Halloween activities demonstrates how community authorities must balance competing interests around the celebration. Noise ordinances, crowd control for Halloween events, traffic management during trick-or-treating hours, and vandalism prevention all require government attention. Some communities designate specific hours for trick-or-treating, attempting to coordinate activity and enhance safety. Others restrict Halloween activities in certain areas. These regulations shape how Halloween is experienced and can be controversial, with debates about government overreach versus legitimate safety concerns. The extent and type of Halloween regulation vary widely across communities, reflecting different local values and priorities. The academic study of Halloween from various disciplinary perspectives has produced substantial scholarly literature. Historians trace Halloween's development and contextualize it within broader historical processes. Anthropologists and folklorists analyze Halloween as a cultural phenomenon, examining its rituals, symbols, and social functions. Sociologists study Halloween's role in community formation and social bonding. Religious studies scholars examine Halloween's religious dimensions and controversies. Marketing scholars analyze Halloween consumption patterns and commercial strategies. This multidisciplinary scholarship treats Halloween as a serious subject worthy of academic attention, countering dismissals of Halloween as merely frivolous fun. The scholarly study of Halloween enriches understanding of this complex cultural phenomenon while also demonstrating how seemingly simple popular celebrations embody deep cultural patterns and historical processes. The relationship between Halloween and notions of the carnivalesque, as theorized by Mikhail Bakhtin, illuminates Halloween's function as licensed transgression. Carnival, in Bakhtin's analysis, temporarily inverts social hierarchies and permits behaviors normally forbidden, creating cathartic release of social tensions before restoring normal order. Halloween shares these carnivalesque characteristics. Costumes allow identity transformation, mischief is tolerated within limits, macabre imagery normally suppressed emerges into public display, and children exercise unusual power in demanding treats from adults. This carnivalesque function helps explain Halloween's persistence and appeal. The holiday serves important social and psychological purposes by permitting controlled release of normally constrained impulses and temporarily suspending normal social rules. The feminist interpretations of Halloween, particularly regarding witch imagery, offer provocative readings of the holiday's gender dimensions. Some feminist scholars view the figure of the witch as representing female power and autonomy threatening patriarchal order, with historical witch persecution as violent enforcement of gender hierarchies. The modern reclamation of witch identity by some feminists reinterprets the witch from malevolent villain to feminist hero. Halloween, with its prominent witch imagery, becomes a site where these contested meanings circulate and sometimes conflict. Young girls dressed as sexy witches versus feminist witches reclaiming maligned identities versus traditional scary witch decorations all coexist in contemporary Halloween, creating complex layering of gendered meanings. The question of cultural ownership and authenticity in Halloween celebration raises important issues about how traditions are transmitted and transformed. When American commercial Halloween spreads to countries with no historical connection to Samhain or All Hallows' Eve, what is being transmitted? Is it authentic Halloween or a commercialized simulacrum? Does authenticity matter for holiday celebration, or is participation and enjoyment sufficient justification? These questions lack simple answers but highlight important tensions in contemporary globalized culture between preserving cultural distinctiveness and embracing cultural exchange. Halloween spread raises these questions particularly sharply because its origins are complex and its modern form highly commercialized. The nostalgic element in adult Halloween participation deserves analysis. Many adults participate in Halloween at least partly to recreate positive childhood memories of the holiday. This nostalgia can be powerful motivation but also potentially distorting, as memory tends to idealize the past. The better Halloweens of childhood may be partly mythical, remembered more fondly than they were experienced. Nevertheless, this nostalgia drives real behavior and shapes contemporary Halloween practice. Efforts to provide children with ideal Halloween experiences reflect adults' own nostalgic desires perhaps as much as children's actual needs. This intergenerational transmission of Halloween, with each generation attempting to recreate and improve upon their own childhood experiences, perpetuates the tradition while gradually transforming it. The theological and philosophical questions raised by Halloween concerning death, the afterlife, and the supernatural remain live issues despite centuries of debate. Halloween's playful approach to death and the dead can be interpreted as healthy acknowledgement of mortality or as trivializing something profound. The holiday's supernatural elements can be seen as harmless fantasy or as genuine engagement with spiritual realities, depending on one's metaphysical commitments. These interpretive differences make Halloween meaningful to diverse participants with very different beliefs. The agnostic can enjoy Halloween as fantasy and tradition without supernatural belief, while the religious believer can see in Halloween's themes echoes of genuine spiritual truths. This flexibility contributes to Halloween's broad appeal across diverse belief systems. The material culture of Halloween, the physical objects associated with the celebration, tells important stories about the holiday's evolution and meanings. Vintage Halloween decorations, costumes, and ephemera are collected by enthusiasts and studied by historians as artifacts revealing past Halloween practice. The shift from handmade to mass-produced Halloween items, the changing aesthetic styles of decorations, the evolution of costume design and materials, all document Halloween's transformation. Museum collections of Halloween material culture preserve these objects and make them available for study and display. Halloween collector communities share knowledge and compete for rare items, creating subcultures devoted to Halloween material heritage. The sensory dimensions of Halloween create its distinctive atmosphere through coordination of visual, auditory, olfactory, and other sensory elements. Visually, Halloween features particular color palettes, orange and black predominantly, with purple, green, and red as secondary colors. The autumn landscape provides natural visual backdrop, falling leaves, bare branches, twilight skies. Auditory elements include creaking doors, howling wind, rustling leaves, spooky music, and the distinctive sounds of children calling, trick or treat. Olfactory elements include scents of autumn, decomposing leaves, wood smoke, cinnamon and pumpkin spice, and the artificial candy scents of trick-or-treating bags. These sensory elements combine to create Halloween's unique atmosphere, instantly recognizable and powerfully evocative of memories and emotions associated with the holiday. The future of Halloween faces various challenges and opportunities. Climate change may alter the autumn weather that provides Halloween's natural setting, requiring adaptations. Demographic changes may shift Halloween participation patterns as population composition changes. Technological development will likely introduce new forms of Halloween entertainment and celebration while potentially displacing older practices. Growing awareness of cultural sensitivity may prompt reconsideration of certain costume choices and practices. Economic factors may influence the extent of commercial Halloween celebration during periods of prosperity or austerity. Despite these uncertainties, Halloween has demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability across centuries of change. Its fundamental appeal to deep human needs and desires suggests it will continue to evolve and persist, maintaining continuity with its past while adapting to future circumstances. In comprehensive conclusion, Halloween represents an extraordinarily rich and complex cultural phenomenon that has evolved over more than a millennium, from ancient Celtic festivals through medieval Christian observances to modern commercial celebration. Every aspect of contemporary Halloween, from the carved pumpkin to trick-or-treating to costume parties, carries historical weight and cultural meaning extending far beyond surface appearances. The customs and symbols of Halloween embody profound human concerns about death, the supernatural, seasonal change, community bonds, and the relationship between past and present. Understanding Halloween's origins and evolution reveals not just interesting historical facts but insights into how cultures develop and transmit traditions across generations, how religious and secular elements interact in popular celebrations, how commercial forces shape cultural practices, and how seemingly simple festivities embody deep cultural patterns and serve important social and psychological functions. The remarkable persistence and continuing evolution of Halloween testify to its ability to serve fundamental human needs across widely varying social and historical contexts. The holiday has survived and thrived through massive historical changes, adapting to new circumstances while maintaining core elements that connect contemporary celebrations to ancient origins. Whether understood as harmless fun, meaningful cultural tradition, spiritual observance, or commercial spectacle, Halloween engages millions of people across the globe in shared celebration that connects participants to long historical traditions while remaining vibrantly contemporary. The future evolution of Halloween remains open, shaped by forces including commercialization, globalization, technological change, environmental concerns, and shifting cultural values. But Halloween's demonstrated adaptability suggests it will continue to evolve while maintaining its essential character as a celebration of season, community, playful fear, and acknowledgement of death's presence in life.